Hey anyone, I'm Hawk, and I love Star Trek. I've been obsessed with it since I was a kid, and today I'm going to go over 5 of my favorite episodes. These are 5 of many, by the way, and they're in no particular order. There can't be just one favorite for me, in terms of episodes anyway, for most things, that is. I want to go over episodes that aren't the ones you'll usually see on people's lists, like The Measure of a Man, or Inner Light, or Q Who. These are great episodes, and I love them, but I think there's so much more to choose from. Almost every episode of every Trek is great, in my opinion, with a few exceptions. Code of Honor. Number 1 is going to be In the Pale Moonlight from DS9, Season 6, Episode 19. If you put a gun to my head and forced me to pick a single episode that was my favorite in the entire franchise, this is a good contender. And that's saying something with a franchise that has so many great episodes, but In the Pale Moonlight really shows just how far Sisko will go to defend the Federation, and it challenges the viewer's expectations of the Federation in general. Sisko is by no means a bad man. He's amazing. But he will absolutely do terrible things for the greater good of the Federation, and it makes you think, would I do the same? Avery Brooks has such an amazing presence, and it really shines in this episode. It's also one of the best Star Trek. It has one of the best Star Trek memes of all time.
It's a fake!
And even if you don't like the show, you have to appreciate that. Everyone in this episode does such an amazing job stressing the gravity of the situation, and they really capture the fear of almost losing everything with their plan's failure. If you haven't seen this episode, I highly suggest watching it, but maybe check out a lore primer first, or you may not get what's going on. This is peak Star Trek. Number 2 has to be Duet. DS9, Season 1, Episode 19. Duet may not make it on most people's lists, but it really hits home for me. It dives into a Cardassian who stood by while others of his race did heinous shit to the Bajorans, and he did nothing. Back then, he could kinda live with that, but as the years went on past the occupation of Bajor, the guilt of standing by ate away at him, to the point where he assumes the identity of a horrific war criminal just to be punished in whatever way the Bajorans see fit. He feels that doing this will pay in some small way for the genocide his people committed, and he hopes that this act will cause Cardassia to finally admit and face the atrocities it committed. His plan falls apart when the dope-ass Major Kira figures out he's not this shitbag war criminal, but just a file clerk who couldn't bear to hear the screams in his head for another minute. She pitied him, which was a huge step for her character because she felt nothing but hatred for the Cardassians before this. This woman grew up fighting the occupation from childhood. She killed and lost friends and even family to these people. Her hatred was, in a way, understandable, but still not right, and this episode is the first time she ever faces that in herself. The episode says a lot of things, and I could do an entire video or maybe 2 on it, but it's a must-watch for anyone who's into Trek, even remotely, and somehow hasn't seen it. Number 3 for me has to be Yesterday's Enterprise, The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 15. So, Denise Crosby. Number 4 is... no, I'm kidding. Yesterday's Enterprise isn't a deeper thinking piece. It's not an episode with a grand real-life message. It's just a great lore episode, and it's the start of a cool storyline that picks up way later in the show. This episode also has a cool approach to time travel fuckery. The Enterprise is faced with an older version of itself, and the Federation we know and love seems a lot more warlike. They figure out the old Enterprise was supposed to be destroyed fighting Romulans to defend a Klingon base, and with that not happening, the Klingons and Feds have been at war for over 22 years. At one point we hear that there's been over 40 billion casualties, at least on the Federation side alone. The crews of both ships are left to figure this one out. This is also the episode where we first discover Worf's love of prune juice, which is cool, and there's an appearance from Shooter McGavin. But this show is also the setup for the return of Denise Crosby as Commander Sela later, and if you play Star Trek Online, she becomes Empress Sela, which is pretty cool. I like that storyline. It's an all-around pretty good episode that deals with time travel in a different way than we normally see, and I always think that's nice. Number 4 is going to be Carbon Creek, Enterprise Season 2, Episode 2. This is a bit of a weird one, and if you got this far, you're probably angry at me because I picked something from Enterprise, I know, whatever. But I really like this episode. In Carbon Creek, Captain Archer and Trip Tucker ask T'Pol to tell them a story about something, about anything. She says that she had a great or great-great-grandmother who crash-landed on Earth and was the true first contact between humans and Vulcans before the landing we see with Zefram Cochrane later in the movies. The captain and Trip need to hear more, so they ask T'Pol to go on and elaborate and tell them about the whole story. Thus, the episode plays out. I like this one because it's a change of pace and it kind of has a comedic feel to it in some ways. You don't really get comedy from most Enterprise episodes, so that's kind of nice. It's not wholly comedic, it just has its moments. But it's in the past, and it's not a time travel episode, too. And it has no one from the Federation in it, in its main story anyway. And instead of temporal shit, they're concerned with fixing their ship, but also worried about what they're gonna do if, 3 Vulcans are stuck in mid-1900s Earth, or stuck on mid-1900s Earth forever. It's campy in a good way, and its ending is perfect, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't like how they wrote the Vulcans in Enterprise, but I don't really care. It's a good show, and a good episode. And number 5 is gonna have to be Deep Space Nine's The Visitor, Season 4, Episode 2. I can't help it. I love DS9 more than any other Star Trek. That is easy for me to pick. I love the others too, but DS9 just hit me totally different. It was a hard pick between this episode or Far Beyond the Stars, but I did a separate video on Far Beyond the Stars a while back, and I think it's worth checking out, so I'll put that link in the description. But The Visitor is so good, and no matter how many times I watch it, it always really hits me hard. This episode is ultimately about a father and a son, and the bond between them. It's pretty simple. Jake Sisko and Captain Sisko are on the Defiant when some engine issue pops up from this anomaly they're observing. It's funny how it's always an anomaly that stirs shit up, but things go south as they try to fix the ship, and Captain Sisko gets just kinda zapped out of existence, deleted. Jake then spends the literal rest of his life occasionally seeing his dad reappear because the captain isn't killed like everyone thought, but stuck in some time stasis and only shows up every once in a while. He has no control of when he shows up and never ages, and no perception of the time in between reappearing in the real world. This just destroys Jake. Understandably so. Imagine knowing that your parent is alive, but stuck out of time, only being able to see them every so often, and there's nothing you could do about it for literally decades. And this goes on for like 60 plus years. Captain Sisko loves being able to see his son grow up, but is obviously upset that it's only in bits, and he's forced to be a ghost for what seems like the rest of time. That is until one day in his old age, Jake figures out how to stop all of this, and the whole thing just hits like a bag of bricks. I'm not going to spoil how it ends, but you should definitely watch it. It's heavy, yet a pretty simple episode, and it's acted brilliantly by everyone in it. And it's just one of those other episodes where if you want to watch nothing else, at least watch this episode. You don't really need a greater context for this one either. You could just pick it up and watch it. So if for some reason you have, tortured yourself by not seeing this yet, I definitely recommend watching this one. And that's it. That's 5 of some of my favorite episodes from all of Star Trek. Now, you may have noticed that there was nothing on there from Voyager, and that's because I have yet to see the entirety of Voyager. I've put it off, not because the show is bad. I've really liked what I've seen of it. I think I've seen up like 2 or 3 seasons of it so far. It has some bad episodes, but every Trek has some bad episodes. But I don't want it to end yet. I feel like if I finish Voyager and I have no more of the old Star Trek shows to watch, it's the end. I don't like the end. I don't like how that feels or seems like it'll feel. So I've just kind of put it off. But I really want to watch the rest of it, and when I do that at some point, I may update this video or make a new one, but until then, let me know what you think of this, and if you got this far, thank you for listening. Stay safe.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't.
Let us know what you think about the channel.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Tell your mom.